Oh boy, where's my camera? Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can't fix this. I don't know what happened. That is crazy. Everybody can hear me though, right? You can hear me? I don't know what happened to my camera. We're going to try this again. See if we can't fix this problem. There we go. There I am. There I am. There I am. Craziness. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the show. I appreciate y'all for coming, as always. Thank you for hitting that like, hitting that share, and make sure you're hitting that notification bell. Today is September 18th, 2025, and boy, do we have a show for you today. So sit back and relax and enjoy. Now, if you are squeamish, I'm going to go ahead and give you a forewarning. There are some things that are going to be depicted here today that might not sit well with you. So I will give you a pre-warning before I show it, but we're going to get right to it. The first story we have today is something that I can show you that you won't freak out about. Is this particular situation right here. No more tax-bortion. So what happened is the first U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals lifted a preliminary injunction from a lower court in Boston. So give me 1 second. Let me do this right here. Right here. So they lifted a lower court's situation in Boston, clearing the way for a law to take effect. The law is a part of One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed by the Republican-led Congress. You know, they always got to call it a Republican-led Congress. Democrats voted for it too. The fact of the matter is that the way the government works is it takes bipartisanship of some kind, whether it's one or not, or 1.5 or 2. It takes bipartisanship. Nobody can just unilaterally pass bills unless they have a supermajority. So it says that certain tax-exempt groups like Planned Parenthood, and affiliates cannot receive Medicaid funds if they continue to provide abortions. Now, as I recall it, back in the day, they said that the federal government didn't fund abortions. And then they moved from they didn't fund abortions to they didn't fund elective abortions. But the problem is they do and have. So Planned Parenthood says this threatens nearly 200 health centers in 24 different states, putting over 1.1 million patients who use Medicaid at risk. Planned Parenthood, question. What risk are they being put at? Having babies? You making less money off of the taxpayer dime? Or you losing an infinite supply of patients and baby parts? Because that's the truth of the matter. That's what's really going on. So why this really matters overall, if you're an organization that performs or supports something controversial, in the case of abortion, and you want taxpayer money, that's a legitimate line to draw. Many of the people believe that the government should fund this, but others believe it shouldn't. You know, the whole taxation without representation thing? And this is not fringe. That's their form of democracy in action when Barack Obama used the ACA to put this in place. And they make these big bills with lots of words that most people don't read because they can't read or see the large amount of text and the number of pages, and they see it as daunting, and they're just like, no, I don't want to read that. So they cover their eyes, and then when something comes up, well, why is this happening 10 years later? You're like, well, what's going on? How did this happen? Well, that was in the bill that you refused to read 10 years ago. There's also the principle of the law. Congress has the power of the purse, as we know, more specifically the House of Representatives. So those that don't know how this works, this is how it works. And if Congress says no funds for the particular behavior, there's precedence and logic behind that. And honestly and truly, at what point in time has it ever been in the history of the United States for taxpayers to pay for someone else's mistakes? If you decide to lay down, open your legs, and let Jimmy 2 times shoot off inside of you and make a baby, accountability, responsibility. And if you want to turn your womb into a tomb, well, you should pay for it yourself. Not you or me or anyone else, but the person that made the decision. Like I said, it's about accountability. If an organization wants to offer abortion services, that's their prerogative. They can do that. But it shouldn't be at the behest of some political theater. Shouldn't be at the behest of the American taxpayers, especially when people have moral and ethical issues with this. If a taxpayer's dollars are funding these entities, that should be a conflict, because not everybody supports abortion, just like everybody doesn't support war. If we really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, taxation without representation would say, hey, if you don't want to support it, you don't support it. However, if you don't support it, you don't get the benefits of it. So those that want to support abortion, let their taxpayer dollars go towards it. Those that don't want to support abortion, those taxpayers money don't go towards it. That would make it very difficult on the federal government, would it not? It would add some extra work, would it not? So Planned Parenthood overall argues that many of the clinics provide much more than abortions. So to give you some statistical breakdown, how Planned Parenthood shows that all these clinics provide more than abortions is every time you go in there, they provide all the services. If you go in for an abortion, you get 4 to 5 other services on top of that. So that dilutes the number of abortions. So it makes it seem as if abortions are a smaller number. But the problem is, if I just want an abortion, if I'm a female, because I can identify as one now, if I'm a female and I want just an abortion, I want just an abortion. But Planned Parenthood says, if you go in here, you're going to get all of these services. So it can make the abortions look smaller. So if I go in for a cancer screening, I'm going to get several other procedures with that, not just cancer screening. So we can make the numbers look bigger than what they really are. It's called padding the numbers. So the constitutional portion of this is Planned Parenthood sued, saying that the law might violate the bill of attainder clause, i.e. targeting a group of without trial. But the problem is you shouldn't get a trial. You kill babies, and you're a corporation. I know the Constitution says that corporations are people up to a certain extent, but I don't believe you should have the right to be able to defend yourself when you kill babies. That's just my personal opinion, and it's never going to go away. So Congress, the courts, and policymakers are facing a clash of moral convictions, of financial convictions, and access to health care. If you can call this health care, that's what they call it. That's the only reason I use the word, because it's not really health care, if you want me to be honest. Killing babies is not health care. Health care is life, say it with me, life-saving measures. Health, someone that's healthy is not sickly. So having a baby is not sickly. Having a baby is natural. If you don't want to have a baby, don't have babies. Don't do the thing that causes babies. That's just my opinion on the matter. Up next, we're going to move to the House of Scams. Now, I don't know many of you, many of you know about the House of Prayer, IHOP, International House of Prayer. They've been scamming people, and per usual with mega churches. So what's going overall is that church leaders from the International House of Prayer, Christian Churches of America, IHOP, which they actually ended up having to change their name because IHOP wanted to sue them. So now it's more of a HOP CC, led by Ronnie Dennis, or Denise. Yeah, Denis, Denise. It is possibly a stolen identity, along with 7 others have been indicted on serious federal charges, not regular federal charges, but serious federal charges of bank fraud, wire fraud, tax fraud, misuse of veteran affairs education benefits. The scheme was to recruit service members and veterans and push them into seminary programs that would drain their GI Bill or VA education benefits and the tuition fees and the housing fees, etc. You get it. You get me. They didn't just do that. They used congregation members as straw buyers to buy homes by way of fraudulent mortgages. Boy, this church just keeps getting better and better. Kind of seems like paying $24,000 for season tickets to Joel Osteen's church, if you will. So, moving on in this particular thing, I'm going to give you the political aspect, the government aspect of it. The government estimates that there are huge quantities of money that's been funneled through this, roughly about $23.5 million from just the GI funds from 2013 to 2021. And this is across five seminaries, and 4 of the 5 states are pushing about $3.2 million each. And that was just solely out of Georgia by itself. And the problem I have with this is the church has been made merchandise of. This is the very thing that Jesus himself came in and flipped the money changers' tables over, because they were making merchandise of God's people. Now, not only are you making merchandise of God's people, you're making merchandise of veterans who already don't have much and have to struggle and fight to obtain what they do have. You're taking theirs. And these people are up to 24 a day that commit suicide. So instead of giving them the loving path of Christ, you're taking the rich path out of their pockets, and you're misusing their money that they're giving to you in good faith, and taxpayer money on top of that, because it's taxpayer money ultimately that goes into the GI Bill. And the GI Bill by itself is designed to support veterans. That money should go to legitimate education and not programs that don't deliver or sham opportunities, because that's what it really is. These people thinking that they're getting something. Say they want to become a pastor, and they're going through this seminary school, and they get through and get done and get handed a fake piece of paper, and their money went nowhere where they thought it was going to go. This is the betrayal of trust and abuse of faith. This is especially gross because religious organizations carry moral authority, or supposed to. You're supposed to have this moral high ground, this moral platitude that makes you better than everybody else because you serve the Most High God. And when I say better, I don't mean better in the sense that you're a better human. Just you're set apart. You're set to a higher standard. And you guys are digging in the ditches with Satan. When you take advantage of people's faith, that's sin. And the Bible expressly speaks about taking advantage of the people. And it makes me sad because how this went down. And they use loopholes and regulatory failures within our own government to do this. The system needs to check so that religious status doesn't become a shield for fraud, because that's essentially what they're doing. They're using their religious status as a shield. And the Bible tells us to take on the shield of faith, and these people are taking on the shield of the almighty dollar. It's gross. It's disgusting. Honestly, I hope this church goes up in flames, because accountability really matters. No one in a religious institution included should be able to be above the law. And this has been going on forever, and it's just now being found out. What happened to the government auditing this stuff? Isn't the Government Accountability Office supposed to audit this stuff? 501(c)(3)s, and the House of Prayer is a large organization. It's not a tiny little podunk church in the backwoods of the mountains. This is a large organization that is in multiple states. So why is it that they're just now finding out about this? Could maybe some government, shill been making money off of it? Some congressmen been making money off of this? They should be convicted and charged and disassembled in every way, shape, and form. because this would be no different than any of these other NGOs that are out there that are wasting taxpayer money. I don't know. What do you guys honestly think about this whole situation? Personally, I think it's disgusting and sad that they are abusing both the federal government, the taxpayers, and God's name, ultimately, because these people aren't Christian. Christians don't do this. Maybe Jesus should come back and beat them out of the church. It would be beautiful. Cleanse the temple. Our next story is this one. Now, I did say I was going to forewarn you of this, and this is where it's about to get a little bit squeamish. So if you're squeamish and you don't like blood, I suggest you avert your eyes. But a motel manager, Chandra, a.k.a. Bob Nagamalasa, or whatever his name is, it's a brutal name, Nagamalayala, Nagamallayah, Nagamalaya. We'll go with that, Nagamalaya. It's brutal. Age 50, was murdered on September 10th, 2025, at a downtown Dallas hotel. Now, this man was an American, someone that had attained American citizenship, and he was killed brutally by Yordanis Cobas Martinez, 37-year-old Cuban national. Now, I'm going to show this, but I kind of sort of want to get through this part right here. But what's really crazy is this man was targeted as an illegal and was set to be kicked out of the country, but what's so crazy is not even Cuba would take him back because of the crimes he committed. So somehow, some way, this man got to stay here. And because of a washing machine. He was told he couldn't use a washing machine because it was broken. He killed this man. So, as I said, if you're squeamish, look away. But we're about to play this. And there's two parts. I'm going to show you two aspects of this. Here's the first one. There we go. Yes, that is a head. That is real blood. This is not a Halloween trick. That is the alleged murderer with a machete in his left hand, grabbing the head. He can't even grab it because there's so much blood. And he's walking it over to the trash can. And here comes the ambulance. You can't tell me they didn't see this man walk over, put the head down, walk in there, and throw the head into the trash can. And then walks out like nothing happened. Threw the machete away, threw the head away, and he's just, oh-de-do-de-do, oh-de-do. And you see these people yelling, hey, 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 this is this guy. This is this guy. He did it. He did it. He did it. That is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Now, here's the next angle, and this angle is quite brutal. So you're going to see this, and I won't play the whole thing because it's fairly long. But if you are squeamish, again, look away. This is him attacking him with the machete. He's trying to get away. He fell. He's doing everything he can to try to stop him. Absolutely tragic. And in here, you can hear the mom screaming. Okay, that's enough of that. This man was killed in front of his son and his wife. Two American citizens watching another American citizen, a father and a husband, be brutally murdered by an illegal all over a washing machine. Absolutely, positively disgusting. And this man should have never been in this country in the first place. And he got to walk around for a little bit before he was caught, but he was finally caught and put in an ICE detainer. If we brought back public executions, this would go away. And I'm not advocating for violence. I'm advocating for something to change the system that we currently live in, because we're too soft on crime, we're too soft on criminals, and we're too soft on actually exacting justice. Oh, what degree is this? First, second, or third? First, second, or third degree? This man murdered this man in cold blood, in daylight, in front of his wife and in front of his kids. I would say a prayer for them. Naga Alia, I think that's how you pronounce her name. It's not funny. There's nothing about this that's funny. It's absolutely disgusting and heartbreaking. And this took place the same day, if you didn't notice, that Charlie Kirk was murdered. Why they didn't mention this at all and waited days after to show it as if it was a new thing is disgusting. Also, Irina Kartuska, I think that's how you pronounce her last name, was murdered on August 22nd, but they presented it as if it was recent. So all of these things to keep you in a state of serotonin dump, a state of shock, a state of awe. Why? What was Congress doing during all of this? While our heads were turned this way, what was Congress doing back over here? Just some food for thought. Our next story, not going to show that again. Our next story is federal tax, federal health tax, to be exact. Now, I don't like anything with federal government and health tax, but this kind of goes along with the whole abortion thing, because they have to figure this out, or a lot of people is going to be losing health care because of the inaction of Congress. But overall, the health care, the health insurance subsidies and tax credits under the Affordable Care Act are going to be going away, and the premiums are going to be gone. Like they're going to be completely sunsetted if Congress doesn't figure something out. Now, overall, you have the Republicans are split and all over the place on this, and the Democrats are like, keep it, keep it, keep it. Listen, at the end of the day, you've given the people something. You need to figure out how to keep it, because if you take it away, it's going to make it look really bad. And if you can't figure out an alternative for this particular situation, then you need to give them what they've been getting. We've already been paying for it. It's not like it's anything new. This has been going on since the Affordable Care Act was put in office or into law. So you either give them their subsidies and their tax credits or put something new in place, because there's going to be a lot of people that won't get health care, and they're going to get slammed with much higher insurance rates if something doesn't change. So both parties claim to support extending them, but they disagree on how. Some Republicans want to rework it, retool it, or limit the subsidies rather than just renew it. And, of course, the Democrats are warning that if the Republicans don't agree, they'll just refuse to vote to keep the government funded. Is that not the craziest thing ever? I get that people need health care. I don't think health care should be a right. I believe that if they never implemented the ACA, more people would have affordable health care. But health care, nevertheless, is not a right. Nobody has a right to anything at all, except for what they have the rights to within themselves. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and property. The federal government giving you anything is not a good thing. The moment the government says they're here to help, you should run in the other direction, because they're not going to help you. They're going to take. But you're threatening to shut down the government over a system that you already gave people because somebody else won't agree, which is only going to hurt the people, because the people need this because you gave it to them in the first place. It's one of the craziest things ever. Threatening the government shutdown because you don't get your way. Is that not the biggest childish temper tantrum I've ever seen, or you've ever seen, rather? It's disgusting. You're withholding from people something that they need because they've been given it. And healthcare is a need. but it's not something that they should get free or off the backs of others, but it is a need, it's a necessity, but you gave it to them, so now you're threatening to take it from them. Who's the bad guy here? Is it the Republicans for wanting to retool it, rework it, or is it the Democrats saying, if you don't give us exactly what we want, we're going to shut the government down and nobody gets anything they want? Think about that. Shut down the government and nobody gets anything they want because you won't do what we want, or retool it, rework it in a way that is less costly to the taxpayers. I'm not saying I agree with the Republicans by any stretch of the imagination, but it's better than shutting down. So why not come to the table and negotiate instead of giving a hard stop? If you don't do what we want, we're done. Why is it a threat of shutting down the government the answer? If you're going to give these people something that they should have never had in the first place because it's not the government's job, you now have to provide stability in this. When laws or extensions are allowed to expire at the whim of a political maneuvering, average people suffer. Had you never given to them in the first place, the average person would have worked hard to obtain what they needed. And I wholeheartedly believe prior to the ACA, the insurance was more affordable. I could afford it and support an entire family off of a very low salary at the time. Now, if I were to do it, one, I don't qualify for the ACA because I make too much. And now if I were to try to provide insurance now out of pocket, it's cheaper than paying an insurance company, almost $3,000 a month. It's crazy. Oh, it can't be that much. By myself, it's $600. What? You add everybody else, it's going to get very expensive. But the government needs to sit down. The government is acting like children. Both sides. Both sides. Republicans and Democrats are acting like children. Overall, what's at stake is millions of people going without insurance. A lot of people were complaining about the big, beautiful bill taking insurance, but really, this right here will take insurance. Only thing the big, beautiful bill added was a stipulation that was already in place but unenforced. It wasn't enforced at all, that you had to work in order to get this stuff, to qualify for this stuff. So you wouldn't be a succubus off the government. Oh, I don't know. I just can't get behind the way our government's acting like children. I say remove them all. Come midterms, vote everybody that can be voted out. That's my opinion. In other news, more federal school funding. The Trump administration is redirecting about $500 million in federal education funding towards historically black colleges, or HBCUs, and tribal colleges and universities, TCUs. Specifically, HBCUs will receive roughly about 48% of a one-time increase under the plan, while the TCUs see their funding more than doubled. So it's a win-win regardless. Both groups get their funding. So to pay for that, the education department is cutting about $350 million in grants to minority-serving institutions, MSIs, that serve large numbers of Hispanics, Asians, and Native Americans. So they're taking from one to revamp and give to all. Instead of being niche, you're casting a broader net overall. And it should work out. It should be a good thing. But, some way, shape, or form, they're going to turn it to make it where it's not. They're going to say this is not going to work. But common sense says if programs are built around racial or ethnic enrollment, quotas or thresholds that puts them to a shaky constitutional ground, that this argues more for the grant programs. But overall, the grant programs have not been working out because if you look into this, $4 billion at least a year in grants go unclaimed. And these grants are not automatic. They have to be applied for. And that's just a little bit of sauce for those that are going to college. Most of these grants go unclaimed. Most people don't even apply for them. Even if it's in your program field or not, if you apply and do what's required to apply, you might get grants. It's a good way to go to college for free. But a one-time infusion overall is not necessarily a good thing. So there's going to have to be some retooling of this to where it benefits long-term, because these schools they need it, which is kind of weird to me. I've always thought, why does colleges need so much money from the government when you have students paying? And I get a lot of people go to school for free, but for the majority people that go to college, they're paying $20,000-$30,000 a year. That's at major universities, and God knows if you're out of state, $40,000-$50,000. You're walking away with almost $200,000 bill by the time you graduate. Which back in the day when I was in school, it was roughly $80,000 to $100,000. You walked out. It's since doubled. But I get what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to push more for a merit-based system where you're actually doing the work and hitting the goals. But I don't see this working out long term, and I see it being more of a problem in the end. I really do. But it will be a temporary win, and a long-term loss overall. That's just the way I see it. Our next story comes from SCOTUS. Now, this particular story is based around Pedro Hernandez, who was convicted in 2017 for kidnapping and murdering a 6-year-old boy named Etan Patz. And this took place back in 1979. It was a while ago. And this was when Ethan was walking to the bus. He got 25 years to life with this particular situation. And recently, in July of this year, a federal appeals court and a second U.S. Circuit Court overturned that conviction. The court said that the jury instructions during the trial were allegedly legally flawed regarding Hernandez's confessions. Some confessions were made after being Mirandaized, which you know how that goes. If confessions are made before it, that doesn't count in court. And the ones made after it are. And some it overall were thrown out or should have been thrown out, and some were or should have been kept. So the judge told the jury they did not need to disregard the later confessions, even if the first unrecorded confessions were involuntary. The appeals court found that the instructions violated the federal law, and it was prejudicial. I always have trouble saying the word judicial. I almost have to grit my teeth to say it. So the DA's office is now asking that the U.S. Supreme Court step in to restore the conviction. So it's been overturned. Now they're wanting to reinstate it. Listen, the man has served his time. You're not going to give him more time. This whole situation is stupid. It's just them playing politics within the courts, which the courts are supposed to be apolitical, non-biased, and seeing things as they are. Wrong was done on both ends, and the time is over. Why are we going back to revisit something like this? Because it's not really going to change much. But some say this is a big deal because the legal technicalities of a high-profile conviction, many thought brought some measure of justice, might disappear. And they're thinking it's going to change court precedents. You murder someone, you murder someone. This is not going to change much of anything. They made a mistake, again, on both ends. The man served his time, and that's that. And most states' life sentences are anywhere from 30 to 35 years. So it's been longer than 35 years. That's much longer than 35 years. And if anybody thinks anything different, you're crazy. The man has served his time. It's been said and done. Overall, again, it's just someone nitpicking at the court system. And I think this just needs to be left alone overall. But it could have some long-standing implications with and around the Miranda rights, which would be touching your Fifth Amendment. So I will keep an eye on this as to see what comes of it, if anything comes of it. But I think they should just leave it alone and move forward. And if something comes up of new precedents with a similar je ne sais quoi, then they should revisit this. Otherwise, leave it alone. What they shouldn't leave alone is this: RICO or bust. Now, everybody knows who George Soros is, correct? Right? We all know who George Soros is. Well, Trump has publicly called for George Soros and his sons, Alex Soros, to be charged under the RICO Act. Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, for those that don't understand what RICO is. The accusations are that they are allegedly supporting or funding violent protests against the United States, which we know that to be fact. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because he funded and has funded and been known to fund Antifa, which has recently been considered a terrorist group. Him and his son have been involved in that. And according to Trump, this rises above the typical protest activity to something more organized and damaging, aka terrorist activity. Now, Soros and the Open Society Foundation, which is his foundation, immediately rejected the claims. They say that they do not support or fund any violent protests, emphasizing their mission is about human rights. However, if you follow the money, you see that this points back to NGOs, which points back to this very foundation giving money to have people shipped to certain locations so that they could do evil activities. I know for a fact in Charlotte, about 79% of the people arrested during the Summer of Love weren't even from North Carolina. Now, if you arrest all those people, and they had over 100 arrests, if you arrest all those people and the vast majority of those people are not from the state, but they came here to protest, but they had bricks and bats and, Molotovs, how did they get here? Because I know people don't just travel around these countries. They're around the country doing these things. Most of these people don't have jobs to do the traveling. So how did they get here? Follow the money. Follow the money. Using a RICO is a serious business. It's not just about protest funding. It's about establishing a pattern of criminal behavior that's coordinated and often secretive, involving multiple actors. So they go through back channels, like using Facebook, using YouTube, using Craigslist and other things to post ads saying to join up, do this, that. And they use a singular person or small group of people to do this, but those small groups of people are funded through those NGOs, and those NGOs are funded through the Soros foundations. I would love nothing more than to see George Soros and Alex Soros go down. I would love nothing more than to see this happen. Holding the elites accountable if someone wields enormous financial backing and power, and it channels into the political influence that George Soros has, or agitation that crosses legal lines, then yes, they should be held accountable and be subject to scrutiny. How is it that these people use their buttloads of cash to skate by and do evil and do crime, and they just get a slap on the wrist or nothing? This is the first time we've heard Soros be brought to heel by a president. Most presidents just take his funding and don't say a word. We have DeSantis in Florida that took funding from the Clintons and the Soros foundations. So can we really trust anybody that's taking money from Soros? Is this a new way of preventing chaos? The assertion here is that the violent protests don't just happen spontaneously, and we know that to be true. They often have backing, because how can the people get to where they get to if they don't have money themselves? Most of these people arrested didn't have jobs. And if they did have jobs, they certainly didn't have a job after being arrested and held in jail for a few days. No call, no show. I'll holla. This is a huge risk from the Trump administration, challenging the elites, but I think if they push the right buttons and knock on the right doors, they might be able to get some real action going on this, as it should be. Our last and final story, sanctions. The sanction talks and trade walks. What actually is going on in this particular segment: after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and Europe has imposed many sanctions on Russia. I recall under the Biden administration, they didn't want to place sanctions on Russia because they felt that it would agitate them and make them act more egregiously. And first, he was met with opposition, the same opposition that was given under the Biden administration. But Trump pushed through and got the sanctions imposed. And these sanctions were blocking or reducing trade in many sectors of Russia. But even with those sanctions, trades hasn't ended. We saw that under the height of the war in Ukraine and Russia, we saw most European nations still doing billions in dollars of trade for oil. Yeah, billions of dollars of oil just alone. So how is it that these countries were supporting Ukraine and telling the big bad Russia to stop, but you were taking oil from them, which was helping fund their activities? Anyone? So, some figures. The EU imports from Russia fell by 89% since early 2022. Exports to Russia have gone down 61%. Now, in the United States, imports have fell by a total of $14.1 billion in the first half of 2021, which the United States was about the only country that really put a halt to things. But the other sanctions that they wanted to put in place, they didn't. So now it's about $2.5 billion in the first half of 2025 that has fallen additionally to that $14.1 billion. But certain critical goods are still coming out of Russia: oil, natural gas, fertilizers, iron, steel, and other enriched uranium, among a few other products. And this is going to every country. I don't get it. If Russia's bad, why are we still trading with them? Now, I'm not saying personally that I think Russia's bad. Really, I think that Russia just gets a bum rap. But why are we still trading? If Russia's so bad, why are we trading? Literally, all you have to do around the world is just stop trading, and it would choke them out. It would have ended the war in a matter of weeks, because you can't fund war if you don't have trade. Now, sanctions often get sold as complete stop, but the reality is a lot messier. Even strong sanctions don't immediately erase all the trade, because you got a deal, you got contracts that you have to fulfill. I get it, but you can break a contract to stop a war, right? Right? Now, cutting trade sharply is painful for everyone, both sides of the aisle. Countries, businesses, consumers are going to suffer. Europe, especially, has been trying to reduce slowly their overall dependence on Russia, but they're not. They're still taking as much as they can get. So, are you serious about hurting Russia? Is Russia really the big bad guy that everybody makes him out to be? Or is trade more important? Because you could strangle them out. We've done it to many countries. We did it to China. You saw how China just bent the knee. The more they sanctioned us, the more we sanctioned them. And eventually China said, wait a minute, now they're outpacing us, and they're our number one purchaser. You get rid of your number one purchaser, it's going to hurt you big. The rest of the world can't make up the shortfall for the 16.1%, which I think is now 18% the United States purchases from China. The rest of the world can't make up that 18%. Any businesses that on the planet that lose 18% of their overall business would go under. Overall, if you're going to be tough and make Russia out to be the bad guy that everybody thinks that they are, you got to be tough and credible. You got to stay on their necks. You want to end the war, that's the proper way to end the war. Otherwise, you're just talking a good game, looking really pretty with a pretty smile for your citizens of your countries, but you're not really out to do anything good. You're not out really to help anyone but yourselves. That's the way I see it, at least. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Guys, as always, I appreciate you. I thank you for being here and joining me for another walk through the forest. Our Bible verse today comes from Romans 12:21. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. As always, make sure you're not one of the ones who can't see the forest through the trees. Thank you for joining me today.